Hello, fellow modelers. Bruce here again. You know, sometimes when we need a modeling tool, we will go out there, search for it, buy it, and if we need it, we start using it right away. And sometimes these tools just kind of drop into our lap, not because of need, but because of circumstance. And that's what happened in my case with this Dremel Moto Tool drill press model 210. I had been talking to a fellow who I saw advertising on Facebook's marketplace that he had volunteered to a neighbor's widow to help her dispense with her husband's models and modeling tools and so forth. And for a year or more, he had been going to trade shows and trying to sell it, and advertising locally and trying to sell it. And he had done a good job of pretty much getting rid of all the rolling stock and motive power, including some nice brass engines and so forth. And I think from what I could tell by talking to him, he had done a good job for his neighbor's widow. I had seen a particular model in the list that I was interested in, and so I made arrangements and drove over to pick it up. And while I was there, he said, look, I got a couple boxes of assorted stuff left, and talked to the widow, and we agree it's just time to try to sell it all as a group. So we discussed things. I kind of looked through the boxes a little bit. He tossed out a number that he and the widow had agreed upon, and you know, I finally just said okay, and put the boxes in the car. And as I was getting ready to pull out of the driveway, he came out of the house with this drill press in his hands. He said, "Oh, I almost forgot." He said, "This goes with it too." So that's how I ended up with this, and now it's been sitting in my storage for the better part of 2 years. But I'm finally working on a model where I really could use this. So here's what we're going to do. This model, because it's been sitting around in storage, has some surface rust here and there, and you know, some of these adjusters have not been used in quite a while. So I'm going to hit it with some WD-40 and some 4/0 steel wool. And I don't need you to watch me just kind of scrubby-dub this thing up a little bit, but I'm going to do that. And after I do a little bit of cleaning and lubrication, I'll come back and show you how this thing operates. And then finally I'll tell you and perhaps show you why I need it right now. So talk to you later. Okay, I've cleaned up the drill press, got rid of all the surface rust. And there wasn't much there, but it was worth the effort. Put a little bit of lube here and there. And let me just go through what each of the knobs and dials and so forth does on this old timer. These went out of production mid-90s maybe, when they introduced the newer drill press that has a lot more functions, and you operate it like a normal drill press, pulling a little handle down. But here's our table. The knob on the right will raise or lower the table. And if you look here at this spindle, where you position this knob right here will determine how far the table can travel up. So you can do, that's your adjustments for table height. This knob on this side will lock the table in place once you get it positioned where you want to keep it, and if that's what you want to do. And let's see, on this side, this is tighten or loosen to be able to raise or lower the support for the Dremel tool itself. And of course, these two are the clamps that will clamp your Dremel tool in place. So, as you recall, this basically came as a toss-in to my purchase of the remainder of the estate sale. And, you know, I've gotten this far in my modeling many years, since 20 plus years. I've never needed a drill press. this one application really would be easier with a drill press, and so that's why I got this out, dusted it off, only to find out that my Dremel tool has a much different shape, much newer, and will not fit into these supports. So having seen that, you got two choices: either forget about this drill press and go out and buy their later model, which is quite a bit of money for what I envision to be one use, or go to the used market and see if you can find a Dremel tool that will fit into these supports. Looking online, you gotta just love what you can find online. I found an old instruction sheet for the Model 210 drill press, which is here. And if you look on the line right here, it says this works with Moto Tool models 245, 260, 270, 280, 370, and 380. So given the choice of using my Dremel tool and buying a new drill press, or using this drill press and trying to find an older Dremel tool, I opted to look for an older Dremel tool because they are going relatively inexpensively on eBay. So here's a Model 260. And the Model 260 fits in the bottom clamp very nicely, and this will tighten up. But I found out that the Model 260, the top clamp will not clamp against the body here unless you use an adapter that they provided when the drill press was new and is no longer with it. But I think I can do fine by crafting kind of a loop of foam to go inside this upper chamber here. Let me pull this out. So this area is just a little bit too big. So I think I'm going to do a wrap of thin foam around there, which will go around the motor tool, and then we'll clamp both top and bottom. The bottom clamp actually does a pretty darn steady job in and of itself. Really no wiggle room there. But I'll feel better if I wrap the foam. So that's kind of where I am. What I'll do is kind of craft my adapter up there, get everything in the way I want it, and then I'll just show you a real quick addition to this video on using it to drill some holes. So talk to you then. Okay, let's finish up with the discussion on the use of the Dremel Model 210 drill press. I had to do one thing on the bottom, that is 3 of the rubber levelers were in place and one was missing, so I taped a piece of cork to the bottom to get it to be stable, which it is now. I used my favorite tape for such things, which is Model 3M 465 transfer tape, which is a double-sided, very aggressive tape. I had said I might use foam to fill in the gap around the Dremel tool because they had originally put an adapter in it. Instead, and this idea came to me in the middle of the night, I made a spacer out of 4 thicknesses of thin cardboard, cereal box cardboard kind of thing, which I cut into strips 5.1 inches long and about ½ inch wide. And I adhered them to each other with the transfer tape instead of glue. I didn't want it to get too stiff like glue might do on the cardboard. 4 thicknesses did a reasonably decent job. At some point, I might put this last piece in, and but mainly it was to the bottom one, as you saw before in the video, really does clamp it tight, and this just helps keep it for sure vertical. So I'm really ready to go in terms of drilling. Now they have no hole in the middle like on normal drill presses, so you have to adjust your heights so that when the table is fully up, the drill is not hitting it. And then to make sure that you can get through your piece of wood okay, I just took a piece of foam board, which is 4 inches by 4 inches, and using that as a spacer. And what I can do now, just to show you how this works, and then finally I'll show you what I want to do with it. Turn on your drill. Take your piece of wood. Now raise your table. I had drilled one before. Now you can see, I think you can see, there's now 2 holes through the wood. So it works fine. And now why in the world did I go through all this problem? Well, if you've been following my videos, you know I'm building a Campbell covered bridge, which is one of their truss bridges just covered in. I've been calling it a Howe truss. I believe it's a Warren truss. We'll talk about that when I do the next update on the covered bridge itself. But each of these, this is the lower main beam on one of the trusses, and these angle blocks need to have 3 holes drilled in each one, top dead center on the peak. It's somewhat of a peaked look to it, I think you can see. So right on the top of the peak, lined up with the grooves in the beam, I need to drill 3 holes all the way through for the truss rods. And this is going to be my tool for drilling those. I'll mark them first, and maybe just with a pin vise, put a tiny starter hole in, then come back and drill these straight through. I need to do 30 of them. And from experience, I've built 2 simpler truss bridges. One, a queen post, which required 8 truss rods, I guess, altogether. And the king post bridge, which only requires 2 truss rods. And I can tell you that trying to do it with a pin vise and to keep the top and the bottom lined up and both of them perpendicular and so forth, not an easy job. And to do 30 like that would drive me crazy. So this was the tool for the job. It took me a little bit of a side trip, as many things do when you're modeling, to fix up the drill press, get myself the proper vintage Dremel tool and so forth. But that's it. So if you do have one of these laying around, it's still usable. You just have to get an age-appropriate Dremel tool for it. So yeah, that's it for this video. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have not already done so, please subscribe to the channel. All right, talk to you soon, hopefully, when I have all those holes drilled for the Campbell covered bridge. Happy modeling.